Hi, can you describe your job?
Hi, I'm Faye and I'm a human rights trainer. This means in a few words that I'm in charge of organizing, designing and conducting seminars, trainings, workshops and awareness-raising activities concerning human rights and children's rights. In order to do that, I work with Compass and Compasito, the manuals for human rights education with young people from the Council of Europe.
How long have you been doing this job?
For the past 5 years.
Who are the target groups of your work with Compass and Compasito?
We work with both minors and adults. With minors, our work is situated in two different settings, formal and non-formal education. With formal education, we mean the visits we realize in public and private schools upon request to conduct human rights and children's rights awareness activities. By non-formal education settings, we mean all the workshops and activities we design and conduct for children that belong to vulnerable groups and are residing in shelters and or receiving educational support from our youth centers. Now, for adults, firstly, we realize training for trainers with the aim to disseminate the methodology and values of human rights education. These trainings are addressing to anyone who wants to be trained in human rights education as presented in Compass and Compasito. Also, we design and conduct shorter seminars for teachers to introduce them to the manuals and suggest ways they could include human rights education in their practice. Finally, we organize seminars for staff members of ARSIS and other NGOs, as well as volunteers and interns.
What is the goal of human rights education? What do you want to achieve?
In all the activities, workshops and seminars we realize, we focus on three basic things: learning about, through and for human rights. Learning about human rights refers to the knowledge about human rights, what they are and how they are safeguarded or protected. Learning through human rights has to do with recognition, the context and the way human rights learning is organized and implemented. It must be consistent with human rights values such as inclusion, participation, freedom of thought and expression, etc. Finally, learning for human rights concerns the development of skills, attitudes and values for the learners to apply human rights values in their lives and to take action for promoting and defending human rights.
Do you feel that the need for human rights and children's rights education is big? Why?
Actually, human rights education is a right itself. Now, if we take under consideration the constantly changing societies we live in and the fact that human rights violations happen everywhere, we can't deny the fact that it's really important. Having human rights education is really important, because only with full awareness, understanding and respect for human rights, we can hope to develop a culture where they are respected rather than violated.
What was your biggest challenge while offering human rights and children's rights education?
I would say adapting to the role of facilitator. From the education I received, I was familiar with the model of the teacher who holds the knowledge and comes into the class, share it with the students. Being a human rights education facilitator is far from that model. A facilitator is someone who makes something happen, who helps and who encourages others to learn and develop their own potential. By facilitating, you create a safe environment in which people learn through experimentation, exploration, giving and taking. It is not a question of one person, a leader, who is an expert, giving knowledge to others. It's hard being in leadership position and letting go of some of the control, but as a facilitator, you have to be prepared to hand over the responsibility for learning to the learners. Everyone should grow through the sharing of experience, participants and facilitators alike. That means that as part of this process, you should get to know your own stereotypes and work on them.
Do you have any tips for other youth workers wanting to start with children's rights education with their target group?
It is important to remember that you do not have to be an expert in human rights to start. Having an interest in human rights is already a good start. However, there are some basic educational approaches that are fundamental in Compass and they can help you. First, start from what people already know. The second, encourage the participation, the active participation. And third, encourage people to translate their learning into simple but effective actions that demonstrate the rejection of injustice, inequality, and violation of human rights. Finally, just trust the methodology of the manuals. They provide you with everything you need. Don't hesitate to be creative and give it a try.